Blood gushed from the hole in her chest, streaming from her eyes, nose, and ears. She stared at him with blood-filled eyes, pleading, "Help me. I don't want to die." She whispered. That night, it had also rained. Rush hour. Huai Tri Street, Kangen District. The green light turned on, halting traffic. A row of red taillights stretched endlessly into the distance. Pedestrians began crossing the zebra crossing. It was early evening. The heat lingered, radiating off the asphalt and creeping upward through the soles of their feet, spreading across their bodies. Sweat oozed from every pore. The stiff collar of the traffic officer's uniform rubbed against the heat rash on Lu Qiao's neck with each turn of his head, itching and stinging unbearably. He resisted the urge to scratch, keeping his eyes fixed on the zebra crossing. A large drop of sweat fell without warning into his left eye, stinging sharply. Instinctively, Lu Qiao lowered his head to rub his eye. In that brief moment, a white electric delivery scooter sped through the crosswalk at 50 kilometers per hour, nearly hitting an elderly man with a cane. The crosswalk descended into chaos. "Damn it," Lu Qiao cursed. He swung his leg over his police motorcycle and gave chase. 2 minutes later, he cornered the white scooter at the side of the road. The rider's long, thin legs rested casually on the ground, exuding a sense of nonchalance. Clearly a seasoned troublemaker, the rider didn't even bother removing their helmet. "Take off the helmet," Lu Qiao ordered curtly. "Officer, please let me off this time. My delivery is about to be late," said a bright, clear voice, tinged with an exaggerated sweetness. A girl. Lu Qiao guessed that she had probably gotten away with running red lights before by acting coy with officers. But today, she was out of luck. He hated electric scooters running red lights the most. "I said, take off the helmet." Lu Qiao's voice rose slightly, his expression stern. The girl exaggeratedly shrugged, a mix of impatience and reluctance, before lifting her helmet off her head with both hands. Her face was revealed, young, naturally pretty, without any artifice. But her hair was shockingly short, a boyish cut buzzed close around the ears, with bristly stubble that pricked at Lu Qiao's eyes. "Officer, I promise I won't do it again," she pleaded with a mischievous grin, pressing her hands together in a mock bow like a dog performing a trick. Lu Qiao felt even more annoyed at her flippant attitude. Keeping his face stern, he asked, "Do you think being in a hurry means you can run red lights? If everyone behaved like you, what would be the point of us traffic police?" The girl lowered her head slightly, feigning contrition, mumbling, "Yes, I know I was wrong, but I'm really running late." Lu Qiao pressed on. "How old are you? Riding an electric scooter for deliveries? Let me see your ID." Realizing this officer wouldn't be easy to deal with, the girl changed her approach, fumbling to hand over her ID with both hands. She added playfully, "I'm definitely an adult, officer. See for yourself. Today's my birthday, actually." Lu Qiao glanced at her ID. He's Xiaoye. Her birth date confirmed it. 18 years old today. What a coincidence. Even on her birthday, a traffic violation had to be handled by the book. Lu Qiao took her photo for the record, as required for educating and documenting rule-breaking scooter drivers. He's Xiaoye. Being in a rush doesn't justify running red lights. It's a disregard for others' lives and irresponsible toward your own. Understand? Got it, he Xiaoye nodded. A helmet only offers limited protection. Running red lights at such speeds. What if something happens? I was wrong, she nodded again. If I catch you breaking the rules again, it won't just be a warning. There'll be fines, or even confiscation of your scooter for serious offenses. The cake inside he Xiaoye's delivery bag was already melting. She couldn't wait any longer. Nodding furiously, she pleaded, Yes, officer, I'm sorry. Please let me go this time. I still need to get home after this delivery. My mom and I barely see each other since the divorce, and she came all the way just to celebrate my birthday." That last line struck a chord. Lu Qiao scrutinized her for a few seconds before waving her off. "Go on. But remember, safety first no matter what. Without safety, Nothing else matters. The moment He Xiaoya started her scooter, she sped off like an arrow, leaving Lu Qiao's earnest advice behind in the sweltering evening air. Whenever Lu Qiao encountered scooter drivers running red lights, he couldn't help but lecture them. He wanted to prevent tragedy from repeating itself, but few ever truly listened. He sighed, shaking his head. Although she rode her bike as fast as she could, she was still late. The high speed caused the ride to be bumpy, and the birthday cake ended up a squash mess in the box. The waiting customer was fuming with anger. He Xiaoya had no choice but to compensate the customer fully for the ruined cake. That day turned out to be a total loss, but at least she had dinner. She took the smashed cake home. By the time she got back to her rented apartment, it was close to 8 p.m. After freshening up, she changed into an old, loose t-shirt, grabbed a bottle of cold cola, and sat on the living room floor. On the table in front of her sat the now unrecognizable cake, its frosting melted and smeared into a gooey mess. She scooped up a bit with her finger and took a bite. Washing it down with a sip of cola, the chill of the drink slid down her throat, and she smacked her lips in satisfaction. Her phone rang. He Xiaoya glanced at it. It was a video call request from her dad, Lao He. She flipped her phone face down on the table. It rang on, persistently, before finally stopping. A few minutes later, a notification pinged. She checked the phone to find that Lao He had transferred her 1,000 yuan with a note. Happy birthday, Xiaoya. She tapped to accept the money and set her phone down again, focusing on the cake. The phone buzzed a few more times. She didn't need to look to know what Lao He would say. Take care of yourself out there. Come home if it gets too hard. Don't worry about not passing this time. You can always repeat a year. The same old litany. He Xiaoya had heard it 100 times and was sick of it. She had left home after failing her college entrance exams, claiming she was going to work a summer job. Since her mother's death, Lao He had no control over his rebellious daughter. Between his remarriage, a new baby, and a demanding job, he had little time to deal with her. These days, his only requirement for her was that she stayed safe. As for everything else, he'd take it one step at a time. He Xiaoya opened her photo gallery, her eyes stopping at a picture. The white helmet in the photo covered most of her face, but her eyes were curved in a smile, sparkling with life. Her gaze lingered on the light blue safety charm tied around her right wrist. She had made that charm herself when she was 10, choosing blue because it was her mom's favorite color. But if I wear this charm every day, how come it didn't bring you safety? Her vision blurred as tears welled up. She whispered softly, Mom, I turned 18 today. I miss you. At 9 p.m., the air was stifling, heavy with the promise of rain. Lu Qiao opened his front door, and a wave of hot, suffocating air hit him. It was oppressively hot, yet he felt a chill. His home was quiet, lifeless, and stiflingly empty. Clinging to a shred of hope, Lu Qiao opened the bedroom door, imagining his wife Xiao Zhen hiding there with their son, planning to surprise him. But the room was empty. Scratching his chin with a wry smile, Lu Qiao turned to the bathroom for a cold shower. Clad in loose shorts and bare-chested, he headed to the kitchen to boil some frozen dumplings. Just then, his phone rang. Startled, he dropped the dumpling into the pot, and the boiling water splashed onto his hand, scalding him. He yelped and rushed to the living room, grabbing the phone to answer. On the screen, his 3-year-old son Duda called out, Daddy, Daddy. He stretched out his little hands, asking for a hug. Lu Qiao's heart melted. 2 weeks ago, he and Xiao Zhen had a fight. She stormed off, taking their son to her parents' home. He had planned to visit them over the weekend to apologize and bring them back, but he had been swamped with accident cases at work. As the newest officer at the Common Traffic Police Station, the overtime always fell on him. Good boy. Daddy will come get you and Mommy this weekend, okay? Lu Qiao cooed. Dudu babbled happily, but soon, the phone was snatched away. Xiao Zhen's cold face appeared on the screen. Lu Qiao scrambled to explain, Xiao Zhen, I've been really busy lately. I just got home and haven't even had dinner. She cut him off. Lu Qiao, stay busy. From now on, Dudu and I will live at my mom's. Xiao Zhen, what are you saying? We just had a little argument. Is this really necessary? His temper flared. Necessary? Her voice turned icy. You think I'm overreacting? Dudu is 3. How often have you held him? You're always wearing that stern face, acting like the world owes you something. How long are you going to be like this? Xiao Zhen. Before he could say more, she ended the call. Dejected, Lu Qiao returned to the kitchen, only to find he had forgotten to turn off the stove. The dumplings were burned. Frustrated, he grabbed a pepper shaker and hurled it at the window. The glass shattered with a loud crash. Outside, a bolt of lightning lit up the sky, followed by a distant rumble of thunder. Within seconds, heavy rain poured down. The weather finally cooled, and so did his mood, slightly. He ate the burned dumplings and collapsed into bed. The night was the coolest it had been in days, and Lu Qiao fell into a deep sleep, until a nightmare jolted him awake. In the dream, blood poured from the hole in her chest, from her eyes, her nose, her ears. She stared at him with bleeding eyes, pleading desperately. Save me. I don't want to die. That night, too, it had been raining. Lu Qiao met He Xiaoya again a week later, at the scene of an accident on Qingxi Road. He Xiaoya had run a red light, rear-ending a turning sedan and denting its rear bumper, making her fully responsible for the accident. Since her electric scooter wasn't insured, the car owner demanded a 1,000 yuan compensation. She refused to pay that much, and the two argued heatedly, neither willing to back down. Lu Qiao and his colleague mediated the situation, persuading both parties to compromise on an 800 yuan settlement after much effort. With the incident resolved, Lu Qiao's colleague hurried to wrap up their shift, urging him to leave. Lu Qiao had already swung his leg over his motorcycle when he glanced at He Xiaoya sitting by the roadside. He hesitated, then got off and told his colleague to go ahead without him. He Xiaoya was slumped under the sun, hugging her knees with her head almost touching the ground. Lu Qiao approached her and said sternly, He Xiaoya, do you remember me? Already fuming from her troubles, He Xiaoya snapped back with a glare. Of course I do. Ever since running into you, my luck's been downhill. Did I owe you something in a past life, or what? Taken aback, Lu Qiao had never encountered someone this defiant. His tone grew sharper. You ran a red light and caused the accident, and now you're blaming others? You're lucky this wasn't serious. Have you considered what could have happened if you were going faster? You might already be in the hospital right now. You're an adult. Can't you think before you act? If you don't care about your own life, can't you at least think about your parents? Before he could finish, He Xiaoya cut him off, yelling, It's my life, and I don't care. What of it? My mom's long gone. She doesn't care either. Tears suddenly welled up and spilled over. She hastily wiped them away, only for more to stream down. She squatted down, burying her head in her arms, her shoulders shaking as she cried. Seeing this, Lu Qiao's anger dissipated instantly. No wonder she was out working at her age and upset about losing so much money. Anyone in her shoes would feel frustrated. Squatting beside her, his voice softened. How much did you lose today? At the mention of money, He Xiaoya pouted miserably. Rubbing her eyes against her arm, she said, Almost 1,000. 800 for the compensation, and 3 delivery orders spilled, costing me over 100 more. Yeah, you've had a rough day, Lu Qiao said sympathetically. But think about it, sitting here in the sun might give you heat stroke. That'd mean more expenses for medicine and losing work tomorrow, right? He Xiaoya stared at him for a moment, her stubborn expression wavering. Then, she stood up to check her scooter. Fortunately, the scooter wasn't too damaged and was still usable. Otherwise, it would have been another financial blow. She climbed onto the scooter, ready to leave, when Lu Qiao noticed her sweat-soaked, grimy t-shirt. Feeling sorry for her, he called out, Wait. Still irritable, He Xiaoya retorted, Don't start lecturing me again. If I annoy you so much, just arrest me. Lu Qiao held the scooter steady. You're in no shape to keep working today. Come on, I'll treat you to a meal. He Xiaoya eyed him warily. What's your deal? Nothing, Lu Qiao replied evenly. Just food. And if you're willing, I'll tell you a story. She bit her lip, sizing him up, then smirked.
Fine.
You look like you'd skip dinner otherwise. Lu Qiao, caught off guard, defended himself. Hey, watch your tone. You're too young to be so sharp-tongued. He suddenly stopped, curious. Wait, how did you know? Feeling triumphant, He Xiaoya's mood lifted. She pointed at the sweat-stained collar of his uniform with her chin and grinned. I can smell it on you. You reek of being scolded at home. Her smile, though still teary-eyed, tugged at Lu Qiao's heart. They went to a street-side eatery He Xiaoya often visited with her coworkers. After ordering, she stopped the boss lady and added 2 bottles of beer to their tab. You're too young to drink, Lu Qiao advised sternly. I'm not young. I'm an adult. You've seen my ID, she shot back, rolling her eyes. Yes, I know you're an adult, he admitted. But I think girls shouldn't drink, especially. Before he could finish, He Xiaoya interrupted, grinning as if he were a source of amusement. You're even naggier than my dad. Not content, she added, and more old-fashioned. When the beer arrived, He Xiaoya poured herself a glass but paused, noticing Lu Qiao's refusal. You don't drink? Lu Qiao shook his head. Smoke, she asked. Another shake. Play games?
Shake.
Cards?
Shake.
He Xiaoya looked defeated. Uncle Cop, what do you even do for fun? I have hobbies, Lu Qiao said defensively. I like fishing. Fishing? Oh, she mulled it over before exclaiming. Now I see why your wife doesn't like you. Lu Qiao laughed. Oh, why is that? Because you're boring. He Xiaoya's laughter echoed, drawing the attention of 3 young men who had just entered. They greeted He Xiaoya with familiarity. One of them, a guy with a small braid, sitting beside her without hesitation. The braided guy slung an arm around her shoulder, raising his beer. Xiaoya, calling it a day so early? Don't get me started, she dismissed with a wave. Right, let's not talk about bad stuff. Let's drink. The 4 clinked their glasses. Lu Qiao, feeling increasingly out of place, got up to urge the boss to serve their food faster. When he returned, he saw the braided guy's hand still resting on He Xiaoya's shoulder. She seemed oblivious, but Lu Qiao's gaze hardened. Drink your beer properly and take your hand off her, he said coldly. The braided guy, startled, belched before smirking.
Who are you, old man?
Xiaoya and I are buddies. Isn't that right, Xiaoya? He gave her shoulder another squeeze. Finally sensing something was wrong, He Xiaoya shoved him off angrily. What are you doing, you creep? The braided guy tried to laugh it off. Just joking. Lu Qiao stood. Let's go, he said to He Xiaoya. Without hesitation, she followed him out. Her 2 colleagues laughed at the ponytail guy, who, unable to save face, followed them out, reaching out to grab her. Lu Qiao turned back, blocked, and pushed him. The ponytail guy stumbled, almost falling. His face darkened, and he grabbed a plastic stool from the side. His friends quickly took it away from him, one whispering in his ear, Don't cause trouble. This guy's a traffic cop, and he's ticketed me before. The ponytail guy looked at his friend, then let go of the stool. He Xiaoya stormed down the street, barely holding back her emotions. After walking a while, she suddenly stopped, turned to a nearby tree, and kicked it fiercely while shouting, Trash! Trash! How could I have ever known someone like you? Lu Qiao stood silently nearby, holding He Xiaoya's electric scooter. He didn't say a word, just waited. When her outburst subsided, he gently patted the scooter and said, You've been drinking. You shouldn't ride. Come on, I'll take you home. Where do you live? He Xiaoya sniffled, nodded obediently, and climbed onto the back of the scooter. The night market wasn't far from her apartment, just a 10-minute ride, but when they arrived downstairs, she hesitated. She didn't want to go up. She didn't want to be alone. For someone barely 18, The events of the day had been overwhelming. Even though Xiaoya had only met Lu Qiao twice, both times involving him reprimanding her, there was an inexplicable trust she felt toward him. That trust had sparked the first time he had stopped her for running a red light. "Uncle, I'm hungry," she said awkwardly. Lu Qiao blinked in surprise. Before, when she'd called him Uncle Policeman, it had been full of mockery. Now, it sounded so sincere that he was momentarily taken aback. "All right then. Uncle will treat you to some noodles," Lu Qiao replied. She hadn't eaten much at the night market, and now her hunger was unbearable. When the noodles arrived, she dug in without a second thought, slurping down mouthfuls even though they were scalding hot. Watching her, Lu Qiao sighed inwardly. He asked carefully, "Xiaoya, do you still have family at home?" Her face remained buried in the bowl. Without looking up, she said, "My dad, my younger brother, and my stepmom." "Do they treat you well?" "They're all right. You're at the age where you should be studying. Why are you out delivering food?" "I took the college entrance exams this year. Didn't pass. Don't want to retake them," she replied. "Why not?" Putting down her chopsticks, she raised her head. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I just can't focus. I keep thinking about my mom." After a pause, she continued, "When she died, I was busy preparing for the high school entrance exams. My family didn't want to distract me, so they hid it from me. They just said she'd gone away for work. By the time I found out, she'd been dead for over a month.
No one told me what she looked like at the end.
They just said it was a car accident." She wiped her eyes. Lu Qiao's mind flashed back to 3 years ago, to that rainy night and the woman lying on the ground, covered in blood, slipping away before his eyes. He hadn't forgotten. He never would, and thinking about it still hurt. If he had been Xiaoya's father, he wouldn't have told her either. After she died, my dad sold our apartment in Kangan district and moved us somewhere else. Not long after, he remarried and had my brother. He's probably forgotten all about my mom, Xiaoya sneered. Men are so heartless. This was why she had always carried a deep resentment toward her father. "So, what are you doing back in Kangan district?" Lu Qiao asked gently. "My mom used to deliver food here. When I was little, my dad worked out of town, so my mom took care of me. She brought me with her on deliveries," Xiaoya said, her voice softening as she recalled. Before starting kindergarten, she spent most of her days perched on a small stool wedged between her mother's legs as they rode the electric scooter. When her mom had to go upstairs to deliver an order, she'd carry Xiaoya with her, either in her arms or strapped to her back. During the winter, they'd secure a windproof cover over the scooter, dark and stuffy inside. Her mom would cut a small hole in the cover so Xiaoya could peek out and watch the bustling city through that tiny window. As she got older and started school, those delivery trips became less frequent. Her mom would only pick her up or drop her off at school. Later, she insisted on commuting alone, taking the subway or bus. She and her mom saw each other less and less, and their relationship grew distant. Deep down, she hated to admit it, but she didn't want her classmates to know her mom was a food delivery driver. A few times, her mom had picked her up while still on a delivery. Watching her mom apologize profusely to a customer for a spilled soup container, Xiaoya had turned her head away. She had felt sorry for her mom, and for herself. The warm, sweaty smell of her mom's embrace, a scent that had once been her safe haven, had faded into a distant memory, lost in the passage of time. In the aftermath of the car accident, the delivery driver, who had smelled strongly of sweat, disappeared from the world. Xiaoya no longer had to worry about a classmate popping up one day and teasing her with, "The delivery I ordered yesterday was delivered by your mom." She could now focus on her studies, attend a prestigious high school, get into a good university, and live up to her own expectations. But the wish she once had, once so beautiful, suddenly twisted into something unrecognizable. She developed a hatred for studying, for school, and became rebellious. She skipped classes, fought, smoked, and drank. Her 3 years of high school were spent in chaos and confusion. There was a deep hole in her heart, but she didn't know how to fill it. Then one day, while watching a delivery scooter race past on the street, an idea struck her. She returned to Kangin District and became a delivery rider, racing through the streets every day. She was doing the same job her mother once did, and in doing so, it felt like her mother was back, close to her again. In a way, she was also atoning for her past contempt toward her mother. She knew that her mother feared her classmates would recognize her, and sometimes, even when picking her up from school, she would hide far away in the corner. Since her mother's death, every time she thought about those little details, she felt immense shame and heartache. Over the months she worked as a delivery driver, He Xiaoye's heart gradually began to calm. Lu Qiao gently comforted her. "Xiaoye, you had a good mother." He Xiaoye nodded, but her eyes became wet again. "But I didn't even get to see her one last time. Every time I think about it, it hurts so much." Her eyes brightened as she looked at Lu Qiao. "Uncle, you're a traffic policeman. Do you happen to know anything about my mom's accident?" Lu Qiao avoided her gaze. "I wasn't here at that time. I only moved here 6 months ago." He Xiaoye's face showed disappointment. At that moment, Lu Qiao's ears again rang with that voice. "Please save me. I can't die. I have a daughter. I can't die." At the same time, he saw blood pouring from her chest, mouth, nose, and ears, staining her delivery uniform red. In that instant, Lu Qiao was almost certain that the female delivery rider who had died in front of him 3 years ago was He Xiaoye's mother. But, "Uncle," He Xiaoye interrupted his thoughts. "You said you'd tell me a story? What was it about?" On a rainy night 3 years ago, it was very late, and the streets were nearly empty. He Xiaoye's mother ran a red light while delivering food and collided with a truck, getting thrown several meters away. Her face was crushed and deformed, her chest punctured with a hole, her ribs sticking out of her body, and she lay motionless on the ground, blood pouring out. She died in extreme pain while waiting for the ambulance for about 10 minutes. At that time, Lu Qiao had held her hand and encouraged her to hold on. She kept whispering, saying she didn't want to die, that she couldn't die, that she had a daughter. It was the most horrific accident Lu Qiao had ever encountered in his career. Her desperate, pleading eyes as she asked not to die often appeared in his dreams. To this day, he hadn't been able to move past that shadow. He had considered telling He Xiaoye this story to warn her of the consequences of running a red light, but he didn't know how to say it. How could He Xiaoye bear to hear about how her mother had died in such a tragic way? Lu Qiao carefully chose his words and slowly said, "1 year, I encountered an accident. It was also a mother. Before she died, she said that the thing she worried about most was her daughter because she wanted to see her do well in school, get into a good university, find a good job, and live a good life of her own. I think your mother must have wanted the same for you, don't you think, Xiaoye?" He Xiaoye was silent, her eyes shimmering with a soft light. "Look, is the person in the video, the person over there?" Lu Qiao snapped back to his surroundings and saw a few people at a nearby table whispering and pointing at him. A moment later, he heard He Xiaoye exclaim, "Oh, Uncle, I see you and
I see me too."
In the video, on the dimly lit street illuminated by streetlights, a thin, tall man in his early 30s was riding a white electric scooter with a 17 or 18-year-old girl sitting behind him. The man was Lu Qiao, and the girl was He Xiaoye. The video titled, "Traffic Police Breaking the Law, Electric Bike Violating Passenger Regulations," quickly went viral. If carrying an adult passenger on an electric bike is a violation, how should the traffic police officer who is riding the bike with a passenger be dealt with? Given that the topic touches on the daily commutes of ordinary people, it quickly sparked heated discussions. He Xiaoye couldn't sleep the entire night, scrolling through the comments. The results made her anxious. Most of the public outrage was directed at Lu Qiao, with calls for his punishment escalating. The next morning, the Traffic Police Department of Kangin District issued a statement suspending Lu Qiao temporarily while a further investigation would take place. He Xiaoyi didn't expect such a minor incident to cause so much trouble for Lu Qiao. She was deeply confused and guilty. She sent him an apology message. Lu Qiao remained calm, repeatedly reassuring her that it would blow over soon. He then comforted He Xiaoyi, telling her not to overthink it. He reminded her to stay off the internet for the next few days and avoid posting any comments, and, if possible, stay indoors. Lu Qiao had seen the power of the internet 3 years ago, but this time, things had escalated beyond his expectations. In addition to accusing him of breaking the law, netizens quickly uncovered information about He Xiaoyi, a man and a woman riding an electric bike together late at night. The electric bike belonged to He Xiaoyi, but Lu Qiao was the one riding it. The close relationship between them led many to speculate. Was there a story behind it? As keyboard warriors dug deeper, they uncovered more personal details about He Xiaoyi. She was a troubled girl who had run away from home. As for Lu Qiao, his wife had recently taken their son and returned to her family. The reasons for their departure were, unsurprisingly, clear. What started as a story about a traffic cop violating regulations slowly turned into a scandal involving extramarital affairs. He Xiaoyi was stunned by the turn of events. She felt lost and scared. When her father called to ask her about the situation, she didn't know how to explain or even where to begin. Your father thought you were working part-time, learning and growing, but now this. Her father sighed, unable to hide his disappointment. He Xiaoyi was enraged by his sigh. She sneered. Isn't that just the way it is? How long has it been since mom passed away, and now you're already back with your wife and kids? Xiaoyi, her father scolded sharply. How can you speak to your father like that? He Xiaoyi retorted. Am I wrong? Have you ever thought about mom in these years? Her father was speechless. He Xiaoyi pressed on. From now on, you don't need to care about my life. Take care of your wife and son. It's fine if you forget about mom, but I won't forget her. This was the first time He Xiaoyi had openly expressed her emotions about her mother's death in front of her father in the past few years. On the other end of the phone, her father suddenly realized that he might have ignored something important. He Xiaoyi followed Lu Qiao's advice and stayed at home. She was genuinely afraid that going outside might lead to harassment. Her lack of experience in life left her defenseless against it. As for Lu Qiao, he too had to stay at home because he couldn't go to work. He hoped that the internet trolls would eventually tire out and things would go back to normal. But while avoiding the internet might shield him from online attacks, it didn't stop his wife from confronting him at home. That afternoon, Xiaojin stormed into the house, furious. She pointed at Lu Qiao and demanded to know what was going on between him and the girl named He Xiaoyi. If he couldn't explain, she would divorce him. Xiaojin, you don't believe me either? Lu Qiao shook his head, bitterly laughing. Lu Qiao's calmness only angered Xiaojin more. She yelled, You're always busy, always working, and now I see what you've been busy with, flirting with young girls? And that He Xiaoyi, a young girl interfering in someone else's marriage, does she have no shame, no sense of respect? Shut up, Lu Qiao shouted, his face reddening as though fire would burst out. Xiaojin froze, shocked by Lu Qiao's outburst. She had never seen him so furious over a woman. In the next moment, she crazily lunged at him, grabbing and pulling at him, yelling, I can't live like this anymore. Let's rip off the mask and stop pretending. No one's going to be happy. Xiaojin. Lu Qiao gripped her flailing hands, staring into her eyes. Do you remember the accident 3 years ago? The female delivery worker who was hit. Xiaojin immediately froze, realizing she could never forget. The accident happened just a street away from the traffic police department, and that night, Lu Qiao was on duty. He and his colleagues rushed to the scene. The female delivery worker was dying, clinging to life despite her critical condition. But she held on, not willing to let go. Lu Qiao encouraged her to hold on, telling her the ambulance was on the way. The truck driver who caused the accident was furious. He argued that he wasn't at fault and the medical costs were not his responsibility. He said his business was urgent and demanded compensation from the victim's family. The female delivery worker slowly passed away as he ranted. When Lu Qiao stood up and told the truck driver that she had passed away, the driver casually muttered, "Not my problem," before dismissing her death with, "It's better she died. Saves me money." Lu Qiao didn't think. He just acted, swinging his fist at the driver. The incident was filmed by bystanders and went viral online, causing an uproar. Lu Qiao was punished by his department and reassigned to a rural area outside Kang'an district. Since then, Lu Qiao had changed. He became a man of few words, distant, and struggled with sleep. The man who once could sleep beside a pillow now woke up in cold sweats from nightmares. Even his son, Du Du, noticed the change. He became quiet and obedient around his father, afraid to upset him. "What's wrong? What happened?" Xiao Zhen asked, noticing Lu Qiao's demeanor. "He Xiaoyi is her daughter."
Ah,
"What a coincidence," Xiao Zhen exclaimed, wide-eyed. Lu Qiao sighed. "It's not a coincidence. She came back to Kang'an district to work as a delivery girl. She says it makes her feel like her mom hasn't really left. She probably hasn't accepted her mom's death yet. That's why she came back." As a mother, Xiao Zhen was deeply moved by his words. She sat down on the sofa, lost in thought. Lu Qiao continued, "I've met her twice. The first time, she ran a red light and I gave her a lecture. The second time, she ran another red light and rear-ended a car. She was in a bad state, so I took her out for a meal." Xiao Zhen suddenly interrupted. "Who filmed that video?" Lu Qiao smiled bitterly. "Probably someone I had reprimanded. They must have seen me that night." "What happened that night?" "That night at the night market, she was harassed by some guys. I couldn't stand it, so I said a few words to them." Lu Qiao suddenly realized maybe it was those guys who filmed it. Xiao Zhen immediately stood up. "Tell me the name of the shop. I'm going to find the owner and ask about it." Regarding the extramarital affair between Officer Lu, a traffic cop with a Lu surname, and He Xiaoya, and delivery person with a He surname, well-informed netizens have contributed more videos and photos. However, it was soon realized that there were only 3 videos that could confirm any connection between the two. The first video shows He Xiaoya running a red light and being educated by Lu Qiao. The second shows He Xiaoya rear-ending another car and compensating for the damages. The third video shows Lu Qiao riding a bicycle with He Xiaoya. The first 2 videos were filmed during Lu Qiao's work, and keyboard warriors couldn't find any fault. The third video shows the two riding together on a bike, but from any angle, there is no intimate interaction, and the keyboard warriors couldn't use their imagination to create a scandal. Gradually, people lost interest and shifted their attention to other trending topics. The public opinion turned completely around after a video from the night market. A man with braided hair harassed He Xiaoya, but Lu Qiao intervened. The man, unwilling to accept it, grabbed a chair and tried to start a fight, but was stopped by his companions. Based on the timestamps of the 2 videos, netizens quickly deduced that the man with braided hair, failing to harass her, had taken the video out of revenge and posted it online. Within one night, the voices attacking Lu Qiao and He Xiaoya disappeared. The next day, He Xiaoya went to work and found that the man with braided hair had been fired by the delivery platform. Lu Qiao issued a public apology, stating that as a traffic cop, he had violated the rules by carrying someone on his e-bike. He urged everyone to learn from his mistake and to maintain a sense of safety when riding for both their own and others' lives. The video scandal finally died down. In the past few days, during her break, He Xiaoya casually looked through the photos, videos, and comments shared by netizens. The whole incident came and went quickly, and before she even realized what had happened, it was already over. This was particularly strange to her due to her limited life experience. Now that things had calmed down, she had the time to carefully analyze the situation and study the mindset of the keyboard warriors. Amidst the videos, photos, and comments, there was an unnoticed webpage link that He Xiaoya had previously ignored. She decided to open it. It turned out to be a traffic news article from 3 years ago. At the time, Public attention had been focused on the extramarital affair, so the link had gone unnoticed. After reading through it, He Xiaoya found that the article detailed an incident where a female delivery worker ran a red light in the middle of the night and was hit by a truck. The delivery worker passed away before the ambulance could arrive. The officer handling the case, Liu, had become emotionally agitated when the truck driver showed disrespect towards the injured woman. In the heat of the moment, Liu had beaten the truck driver. Due to public pressure, Liu was punished with a written reprimand and transferred out of Kang'an district. The news photo showed the delivery worker lying on the ground, her body covered with pixelated mosaics, making it difficult to discern the extent of her injuries. However, the distinctive piece knot on her right wrist stood out, although the blue color had been stained red with blood. That piece knot had been made by her mother when she was 10 years old. Her mother had never left it, carrying it with her all those years. He Xiaoya suddenly understood everything. "Uncle, I want to see you," He Xiaoya said on the phone. "Xiaoya, what happened?" Lu Qiao asked, hearing a trace of tears in her voice. He Xiaoya sniffled. "I want to see you right away." "All right, I'll wait for you downstairs," Lu Qiao said. After hanging up, Lu Qiao furrowed his brows, feeling worried. Xiaozhen, who was feeding milk to Dudu, noticed his unease and asked, "What's wrong?" "He Xiaoya is coming to see me. I think she's figured something out," Lu Qiao replied. "Are you nervous?" Xiaozhen asked.
Li Yao nodded.
"A little. I'm worried I might say the wrong thing." Xiaozhen picked up Dudu and said, "Don't worry. We'll go down and wait with you." He Xiaoya stood under a tree not far away, standing on tiptoe and peering towards them. Lu Qiao saw her at a glance and walked over. "Xiaoya, how have you been the past couple days? Has your work been affected?" Lu Qiao asked, pretending to be casual. He Xiaoya shook her head slightly. "Come on, tell me. What do you need me to help with?" Lu Qiao smiled. He Xiaoya took out her phone, found the news from 3 years ago, and handed it to Lu Qiao. Lu Qiao fell silent. He Xiaoya softly asked, "Uncle, have you met my mom? The incident 3 years ago, you were the one handling it, right?" Lu Qiao stopped smiling and nodded gently. "Yes." "Uncle." Even though she had practiced saying this many times, when she spoke, He Xiaoya's eyes immediately became red and her voice choked up. "Did Mom really say that before she passed away? She wanted me to study hard, go to a good university, and find a good job." Lu Qiao felt a pang in his heart. He gently said, "Yes, your mom said that to me." In reality, at that time, the pain had made her consciousness blurry. She couldn't speak a complete sentence and kept muttering, "I don't want to die. I can't die. I have a daughter." But it didn't matter. All mothers in the world would wish to see their daughters live well. He Xiaoya bit her lip and asked again, "Did Mom feel pain when she left?" Lu Qiao's nose became sore, and he took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Your mom went quickly without pain." He Xiaoya's tears slid down her face, and she wiped her face and smiled. She bowed deeply to Lu Qiao. "Uncle, thank you. Thank you for everything you did for my mom, for staying with her and not letting her die alone." Lu Qiao's eyes moistened. He hurried to help her up, his voice trembling. "I didn't do anything." He Xiaoya smiled again, her eyes sparkling with tears. "Uncle, when I get into university next year, I'll come and tell you all about it," He Xiaoya said, her eyes bright. Now, she understood the whole story. She felt certain that her mother, watching from above, must have felt sad about her ungratefulness. That's why she had led her to meet Lu Qiao, the person who had been with her mother in her final moments, helping her resolve the emotional knot in her heart. "He Xiaoya," Lu Qiao called out to her back, "don't run red lights while riding your bike. If I catch you, you'll be fine." He Xiaoya waved her hand without turning back. Xiaozhen walked over with Dudu and stood beside Lu Qiao. "The little girl seems to have passed that hurdle," Lu Qiao said, feeling genuinely relieved. "And what about the hurdle in your heart?" Xiaozhen teased him. "When will you stop having that nightmare?" Lu Qiao looked up at the sky and sighed. "It'll pass too." As he spoke, he felt a sense of release. He had completed an important task. It was the request that Xiaoya's mother hadn't been able to say before she passed away. He was sure that tonight, he would sleep soundly. Lu Qiao turned to look at his wife. Xiaozhen, thank you. Xiaozhen pretended not to understand. Thank me for what? Lu Qiao hugged her shoulders. Thank you for going to the night market and finding the evidence that cleared my name. Thank you for your tolerance all these years. I know you've endured a lot. Xiaozhen gave him a playful glare. You know that's enough. That day, Xiaoya packed her things and left Kang'an district. On the train, the sky was a deep blue and the clouds were peacefully gathered together. Through the window, Xiaoya gazed at the clouds, blinking without looking away, as if her mother was sitting on a cloud, waving at her. In her heart, Xiaoya said, Mom, I'm going back to school. Don't worry, I'll work hard and live my life well. You watch over me from up there.